A fractured dawn has haunted her dreams for weeks. Lyra, a young apprentice mage, knows these visions are more than just nightmares. They are a warning. The world's magic is slowly coming undone, and only the truth about the shattered gates of dawn can restore its balance. Tonight, she will risk everything to find that truth. She has decided to quietly enter the forbidden archives of echoes, a place no apprentice is permitted to tread. If she is discovered, the outcome would be deeply serious. Being sent away, and the total loss of her magical gifts, could await her. Still, the pull of the vision is too strong to ignore. Ancient mysteries and powerful guardians rest within those halls, and Lyra is about to stir them. By the end of this story, you will understand how a single act of courage can mend a fractured world, and what it truly takes to hold the light. What mysteries do you imagine are waiting for her in the quiet halls? I would love to know where you are listening from and what the local time is there as we begin this journey together. The scroll seemed to find her more than she found it. Nestled between two dusty, ordinary-looking ledgers, its edges pulsed with a soft, golden light. Lyra's breath caught as she carefully unrolled it. The script inside was not ink, but threads of pure, woven light, and they were already beginning to fray and fade. She had only moments. Her fingers trembled as she formed the first sigil of the light-weaving spell, a complex pattern of focused intention she had only ever practiced on simple crystals. Channeling her own magic, she directed a gentle beam into the parchment. The threads of light responded, twisting and reforming into a language she could understand. It was a ritual, a procedure of immense power, meant to mend the very gates of dawn. But as the final symbol clarified in her mind, a deep, grinding sound echoed from the far end of the chamber. One of the great stone statues, a silent sentinel she had passed without a thought, was now turning its head, its empty eye sockets fixed upon her. The weight of her choice warred with the primal urge to run. This knowledge was forbidden for a reason, yet the world itself was at stake. She made her decision in a heartbeat. She would not fight. She would run. Pouring all her concentration into a final, desperate scan, she burned the ritual's steps into her memory, just as the scroll dissolved into shimmering dust. The sentinel took a heavy step forward, its stone feet scraping against the floor. Lyra turned and fled, the guardian's relentless pursuit herding her away from the known paths and into the archive's deeper, forgotten wings. Here, the air crackled with unstable magic, and shelves tilted at impossible angles. It was then, as the full scope of the ritual settled in her mind, that she understood the profound truth. The scroll she just decoded was only the first of three. The mending required a triad of ancient songs, and she now possessed only one. With the sentinel's footsteps growing ever closer, her hand brushed against a seemingly solid wall, which gave way to a hidden passage. She slipped inside, the stone sliding shut behind her. For a moment, there was only silence and the frantic beating of her own heart. Then, from the profound darkness ahead, a soft, melodic hum began to resonate, a clear and inviting call from another lost artifact. The melodic hum led Lyra into a vast, circular chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Dozens of softly glowing orbs drifted lazily through the air, each pulsing with a gentle, inner light. They moved in a slow, intricate dance, and Lyra understood immediately that this was not a random display. It was a lock. The second scroll was here, but she had to earn it. The puzzle required her to align the orbs into a specific constellation, a pattern she could feel more than see, a resonance in her own magical core. It demanded absolute focus. Her fingers moved carefully, guiding the shimmering spheres with delicate threads of her will. One by one, they slid into place, the chamber humming with increasing harmony. The final orb clicked into its position, and for a breathtaking moment, the entire room was bathed in a wave of pure, calming light. The ache in her muscles from her frantic run faded, and the lingering worry in her mind quieted, soothed by the chamber's restorative energy. But the light also illuminated a figure standing in the entrance. Kalin, another apprentice from the lower halls, stepped forward, his expression a mixture of awe and sharp suspicion. He had been following her. Lyra's heart tightened. Her mission, so solitary and secret, was now compromised. Could she trust him, or was he just another obstacle, a rival seeking the same power for himself? She weighed her options in a tense silence, her hand instinctively moving to protect the memory of the first ritual burning in her mind. Kalin broke the stalemate with a quiet, heartfelt confession. He was not there for glory. He sought to mend the gates to save his homeland, a coastal village where the very light was fading, leaving the land and its people in a slow decline. His sincerity, born of shared hardship, felt genuine. It was a risk, but a necessary one. Lyra cautiously shared her own vision of the fractured dawn, forming a fragile alliance built on mutual need. Together, they pooled their magic to stabilize the brilliant light, now flooding the chamber. But their combined power was a shock to the ancient system. A deep, resonant chime echoed around them, and with a groan of shifting stone, the chamber's exits sealed shut. An ancient security ward had been triggered. They were trapped, with only a short time before the archive's defensive spells reset, a process that would likely erase everything and everyone within the sealed space. Concern began to rise, but then Kalin pointed upward. A faint, silver glimmer of actual starlight was seeping through a thin crack in the highest part of the wall. It was a flaw in the ancient stonework, a hidden route not meant to be found, and it pointed like an arrow toward the final piece of the puzzle. The crack in the stone was a fragile, silver promise. Lyra and Kalin pooled their magic, not as two separate streams, but as one. He channeled raw power to widen the gap, while she wove the escaping starlight into a solid, shimmering pathway. It was a delicate art, a dance of wills where a single misstep would mean the bridge dissolving beneath their feet. They had to move in perfect harmony, their breaths and steps synchronized as they crossed the chasm that fell away into absolute darkness. Reaching the other side brought a wave of shared relief, a bond forged in that moment of trust. But the bridge of light shattered instantly, its glittering fragments swallowed by the void below. There was no going back. They were sealed in a new, unknown part of the archives, a narrow corridor that pressed in on all sides. The air was still and heavy, the walls feeling as if they were slowly closing. Lyra felt a familiar worry begin to rise in her chest, a tightness that made it hard to breathe. Kalin, however, felt the urgency of their situation. He whispered that they needed to move quickly, that the noise of their escape would have drawn more attention. His concern was for the guardians that might even now be searching for them. Lyra closed her eyes, pushing the suffocating feeling away. She focused on the image of the fractured dawn from her vision, on the fading light in Kalin's village, on the greater need that dwarfed her own discomfort. When she opened them again, she conjured a small, gentle orb of light. It floated just ahead, a beacon in the oppressive dark that calmed her own fears and reassured her companion. The corridor eventually opened into a small, circular room, its walls covered in an ancient mural. The artwork depicted the glorious gates of dawn, and then their tragic shattering. But the final image was the most haunting. It showed a single mage, arms outstretched, their very essence flowing into the cracks of the broken gates to seal them. The message was devastatingly clear. A profound personal commitment was required, a willing act where one individual would give everything to mend the world. The personal cost of their quest had just become terrifyingly real. As they stood in stunned silence, the central gem in the mural, a carved sunstone, began to glow with a soft, warm light. With a quiet whisper of stone on stone, a section of the wall slid away, revealing not another dark passage, but a serene, hidden garden bathed in an eternal, gentle twilight. This, they knew, was where the final scroll awaited. The Garden of Whispers was a sanctuary of impossible stillness. Every leaf and petal seemed to hold its breath, bathed in the soft glow of a twilight that had no source. The air itself was thick with a sweet, heavy fragrance, and within that scent, Lyra heard them, faint, melodic words, drifting from the bowed heads of luminescent flowers. The path ahead was not one of stone, but of shimmering, shifting illusions, a maze that changed with every step. To find their way, they had to truly listen. Kalin, with his practical mind, focused on the logical patterns in the whispers, while Lyra felt their emotional currents, the ebb and flow of their ancient song. It was a test of harmony, not just of magic, but of spirit. Their combined understanding slowly revealed a single, stable path through the deception, leading them to the heart of the garden. There, cradled within the petals of a crystalline blossom that pulsed with a soft, inner heartbeat, lay the final scroll. As Lyra's fingers gently closed around it, the ground trembled. The very earth before them rose, taking the form of a colossal being of stone and moss and root. Its eyes were deep pools of soil, and its voice was the rumble of a mountain. "You seek the power to mend the world," it intoned, "but power demands purpose. Show me the truth within your heart." The elemental's gaze fell upon Lyra, and she felt its awareness brush against her mind. To lie was impossible. She spoke not of grandeur or destiny, but of her own fear, the recurring vision of a world growing cold and dark. She confessed her hope, a fragile thing, that her small life could be of service to something greater. Her honesty hung in the air, a quiet offering. The elemental studied her, then Kalin, and seemed to find the sincerity it sought. It bowed its great head, granting them not only the scroll, but a whispered blessing, a faint shimmer of emerald light that settled over them like a cloak of moss. Yet its final caution was a sobering thought in Lyra's mind. "You have passed my test, but the true watchers remain. The veil weavers, guardians of stillness, will sense the ritual's activation. They believe the gates were set aside for a reason, and they will oppose any attempt to restore them." As they stepped from the garden's tranquil border, the deep indigo of the night sky was already softening to a pale gray. Dawn was approaching, and with it, their one chance to act. They had all 3 scrolls, but now they needed a sanctuary, a place to work the great mending before the first ray of sun broke the horizon and before the veil weavers could find them. The Sanctuary of Echoes was a pocket of profound quiet, a small cavern where the very rocks seemed to absorb all sound. Here, generations of mages had sought clarity, and now Lyra and Kalin unrolled the 3 scrolls upon a smooth, central stone. The threads of light from each parchment flowed together, weaving a single, breathtaking tapestry of instruction in the air between them. The full ritual was now clear. They must journey to the peak of the Sunspire mountain, the original site of the Gates of Dawn, and at the precise moment of sunrise, channel the dawn's first light through a focus crystal to mend the fractures. Kalin's voice was low with emotion as he traced the glowing lines. His coastal village, he explained, depended entirely on the gentle light the gates once provided for their crops and the health of their fishing waters. Its continued fading was not just an inconvenience. It was a slow, quiet crisis for everyone he knew. This success was deeply personal for him, a tangible hope for his home. Lyra listened, her own heart heavy with a different knowledge. Her mind returned to the mural, to the image of the mage giving their essence to seal the cracks. The idea of a great personal offering was no longer an abstract concept, but a sobering possibility. Could that be the final cost of this mending? Yet, looking at Kalin's determined face, seeing the weight of his people on his shoulders, she pushed her own fear down. They had come too far to turn back now. In a moment of silent understanding, they agreed to make for the Sunspire together, combining their remaining strength and magical resources for the difficult ascent. As if the world itself were urging them forward, a deep tremor suddenly shook the sanctuary, dislodging a fine dust from the ceiling. The instability was accelerating. The ritual would not wait for a convenient time. They had one chance, and the deadline was absolute. They had to reach the summit before the next dawn broke. With a shared, resolute breath, they stepped out of the sanctuary's stillness and into the cool air of the waking world. There, piercing the sky in the distance, the formidable peak of the Sunspire stood silhouetted against the fading stars, a silent challenge they had no choice but to accept. The climb was a vertical world of wind and shadow. Their levitation spells hummed, lifting them in short, draining bursts up the sheer cliff face. Each magical push was a beacon in the thin mountain air, and it did not go unnoticed. A predatory rock drake, scales the color of granite, detached itself from a high ledge with a leathery snap of its wings. Kalin reacted without hesitation. He wove an illusion of a second climbing party, a shimmering duplicate of themselves that shot off to the left, drawing the creature's sharp gaze and a piercing shriek. In that precious moment of distraction, Lyra poured her own will into the air, solidifying it into a shimmering, dome-like barrier, just as the drake turned back. The creature slammed into the magical shield with a concussive thud that vibrated through the stone. The drake recoiled, circling once before retreating to its nest, but the cost was steep. Both apprentices slumped against the rock, their magical reserves feeling hollow and thin. The higher they climbed, the more Lyra's old fear gripped her. The world fell away into a dizzying drop, and her breath came in short, tight gasps Her fingers trembled, threatening to lose their purchase on the cold stone. Kalin's voice was a steady anchor in the rushing wind. He did not dismiss her fear, but reminded her of the vision, of the mended dawn, of the light his village so desperately needed. His belief in her was a lifeline. Drawing a deep, shaking breath, Lyra made a choice. She would not be led. On the next stretch, a knife-edge ridge of rock with a terrifying drop on either side, she moved first. Placing one foot carefully in front of the other, she focused only on the path ahead, her determination a shield against the vertigo. This was her resolve, her answer to the mountain and to her own doubt. They finally reached a wide, sheltered ledge as the last colors of sunset faded from the sky. Exhausted, they allowed themselves a moment to rest, but the relief was short-lived. Peering down the immense slope they had just scaled, Kalin pointed to a chilling sight. A cluster of eerie, silent lights was moving up the mountainside with an unnatural, steady pace. The Veil Weavers were coming. As they watched the pursuers' progress, Lyra felt a warmth against her chest. She pulled the focus crystal from its pouch. It was glowing with a soft, persistent light, its inner fire brightening as if in tune with a hidden clock. The crystal was sensing the approaching dawn, a silent, urgent reminder that their time was running out. The narrow pass was a trap of stone and shadow. Figures clad in robes the color of deep twilight emerged from the rock itself, their forms coalescing from the mountain's essence. Alara, their leader, stepped forward, her voice calm but unyielding. She did not raise a hand in anger, but the air around Lyra and Kalin thickened instantly, a binding spell of immense pressure that sought to still their movements and their magic. "You carry a danger you cannot comprehend," Alara stated. "The scrolls must be returned. The gates were not merely broken, they were set aside. To mend them is to risk unraveling the very fabric of reality." Her words struck Lyra with a force greater than any spell, planting a seed of profound doubt. Was her vision a warning to act, or a plea to leave things be? The weight of the decision was immense, but as the binding magic tightened, Lyra saw the fading hope in Kalin's eyes, and she remembered the quiet desperation of his village. She made her choice. She would trust the light she had seen in her dreams. "Now, Kalin," she whispered. Their combined power erupted not as an attack, but as a pure, brilliant shield of concentrated daylight. It flared outward, a silent, blinding wave that forced the Veil Weavers to recoil, their connection to the subtle magics of the mountain momentarily severed. The binding spell shattered. In that precious window of stunned silence, the two apprentices turned and fled, scrambling up the treacherous path and away from the impassioned guardians. The confrontation left them breathless, their minds reeling. Alara's warning was a chilling echo, a legitimate fear from those sworn to protect the world's stability. Yet the alternative was a slow, certain fading. This was no longer a simple quest, but a choice between two perils. Deeper into the mountain they climbed, until a sudden shift in the rock face revealed a concealed opening, a sliver of darkness that promised refuge. They slipped inside, finding a small, dry cave hidden from the wind and any searching eyes. For the first time since their flight began, they could stop and truly consider the path ahead, the final steps of their journey waiting just beyond the cave's mouth. The cave was not merely dark, it was a place of deep silence. Its walls were lined with still, black pools, their surfaces like polished obsidian. As Lyra and Kalin moved deeper, their own reflections did not appear. Instead, the water stirred, showing them not what was, but what could be. In one pool, Lyra saw a world renewed. The dawn was whole, its light gentle and strong, and Kalin's coastal village was bathed in a golden warmth, the water teeming with fish and the fields lush with growth. But in the center of that brilliant light, she saw herself, not as a living person, but as a statue of pure, radiant energy, her form forever woven into the mended fabric of the gates. The vision was not one of an ending, but of a profound and permanent transformation, a transition into something greater, yet a release of all she had been. In another pool, a different future unfolded. The gates remained shattered, and the world's magic slowly faded away into a gray, silent stillness. Life persisted, but it was a dim echo, a world without wonder or song. Kalin watched his own reflection in this dark water, seeing his homeland slowly surrender to the creeping pallor, the vibrant community he knew fading into a quiet, enduring hardship. The Veil Weaver's concern was also laid bare in a third vision. It showed a reality where the mending went awry, where magic did not fade but erupted, becoming a wild, uncontrollable storm that reshaped the land and challenged the very nature of existence. It was a chaos born of good intentions, a validation of the Weaver's solemn duty. Lyra felt the weight of these possibilities settle upon her, a burden more immense than any mountain. Kalin saw the conflict in her eyes and gently suggested there had to be another path, a way to achieve the mending without such a profound personal cost. But Lyra's resolve, forged in the fire of these reflections, had crystallized. She looked from the vision of a saved world to the one of a slow decline, and her choice was made. If her life was the anchor that would hold the light, then she would give it willingly. This was not a burden, but a purpose. Stepping from the cave's profound quiet, they found the world outside washed in the first pale hints of morning. The sky was softening from black to a deep, ethereal blue, a silent herald of the approaching moment of truth. Their time for doubt was over. The final cliff was a sheer wall of unforgiving stone. Lyra pressed her hands against the cold rock, her magic flowing into it like a gentle stream. She wove the stone's own substance into shimmering handholds and narrow ledges, a fragile staircase ascending into the pre-dawn gloom. Kalin worked beside her, his own power stretching across the void, below them as a safety net of woven light, a soft, glowing web ready to catch a fall. Their rhythm was a delicate balance, a shared breath of concentration. Then the mountain shook. A cascade of loose rock and debris tumbled down from above, a roaring avalanche of stone aimed directly at them. Lyra froze, her focus shattered by the sight. Kalin shouted a warning and lunged, pushing her against the cliff face as he threw a shield of raw force over them both. The rocks pounded against his magical barrier, and a sharp fragment slipped through, striking his shoulder with a heavy impact. He cried out, his grip on the light net faltering for a terrifying second. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs, her old fear of the dizzying height surging back. But seeing Kalin's strained expression, his arm hanging limp, something in her shifted. The fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. She reached for him, her hands glowing with a soft green light as she whispered the words of a soothing spell. It was a simple charm for easing discomfort, but she poured all her remaining strength into it, feeling the strain of his injury lessen. She then turned back to the cliff. "I will lead now," she said, her voice steady. "You conserve your strength." She redoubled her efforts, her magic flaring as she forged the path upward, each new handhold a testament to her resolve. Kalin, fighting through the persistent ache, managed to maintain the safety net, his jaw clenched in determination. They pushed on, inch by grueling inch, until finally their hands grasped the flat, windswept stone of the summit. The eastern horizon was a thin, brilliant line of gold. They had no time to rest. Looking back, they saw the veil weavers emerging from the lower mist, their silent forms gliding upward with relentless purpose. The ritual had to begin now. Before them, the ancient platform of the shattered gates of dawn lay exposed, its grand archways cracked, and its surface marked by time, waiting silently for the light that could make it whole. They moved to the center of the ancient platform, the wind whipping at their robes. Unfurling the scrolls, they began to chant, their voices a fragile thread against the growing roar of the coming dawn. Lyra held the focus crystal aloft, and as the first sliver of sun broke the horizon, a beam of pure, undiluted light slammed into it. The crystal ignited, becoming a miniature star in her hands, and she channeled that power directly into the fractured archways of the gates. A deep, resonant hum filled the air as the cracks in the stone began to pulse with a golden luminescence, slowly weaving together like a careful restoration. But then the veil weavers emerged onto the summit, their forms stark against the brightening sky. Alara raised her hands, not in violence, but in solemn opposition. A wave of silencing magic, a deep indigo counter-rhythm, flowed toward them, meeting the golden light. The gates shuddered intensely, the newly sealed sections flickering as if caught in a storm. The platform itself began to vibrate, a dangerous pitch that suggested a powerful release of energy if the standoff continued. Lyra made a split-second choice. She poured every last ounce of her will into the crystal, anchoring the mending light, and shouted to Kalin to hold the line. Then, she turned her gaze to Alara, her voice ringing out over the magical tumult. She did not plead or command, but instead offered an invitation. Do not fight the light, help us guide it. The breaking was a moment of change, but this mending can be the new beginning. Join us. The fate of everything now balances on a single, harmonious note. As the sun fully crested the horizon, the conflicting magics reached a crescendo. The gates of dawn blazed with an unbearable brilliance, and from within that radiance, Lyra felt a profound and unsettling pull, as if the very core of her being was being gently, irresistibly drawn toward the light. The truth of the ritual unfolded in a single, breathtaking moment. The mending was not a matter of channeling power, it was a matter of anchoring it, and the anchor required was a mage's own magical essence. The gates could not hold the light without a part of a living soul, woven permanently into their foundation. Lyra did not hesitate. She met Kalin's worried gaze with a look of profound peace and stepped forward, offering her own magic, the very core of her being, to the brilliant light. She poured it all into the crystal, a river of shimmering energy flowing from her hands into the fractured stone. As her power merged with the dawn, the gates of dawn solidified, their cracks vanishing into a seamless, radiant whole. A steady, soothing light poured from them, washing over the mountain peak in a gentle, warming wave. The work was done, but as the light stabilized, Lyra's own light faded. Her legs gave way, and she settled onto the cool stone, her body feeling deeply weary, and her connection to magic, the thing that had defined her entire life, now feeling like a quiet, distant memory. A heavy silence fell upon the summit, broken only by the wind. Kalin watched, his own heart filled with a mixture of awe and deep sorrow. He had wanted to save his home, but he had never understood the cost would be carried by his friend. Alara and the Veil Weavers stood motionless, their stern expressions softening into a shared understanding. They had fought to prevent a great unraveling, but in doing so, they had failed to see the quiet courage required to prevent a slow fading. They had been guardians of stillness, while Lyra had become an agent of renewal. Moved by a compassion that transcended their ancient duty, Alara stepped forward. She knelt beside Lyra, and where moments before there had been conflicting magic, now there was only a desire to help. Alara placed her hands on Lyra's shoulders, channeling not a counter spell, but a gentle, restorative energy, a gift of her own power to nurture the faint spark of life within the young mage. Lyra drew a sharp, shuddering breath, her eyes fluttering open. It was not a full restoration of her magic that was gone, given freely to the world, but it was the gift of life itself. A truce, unspoken and powerful, was forged in that moment on the mountaintop. The gates were whole, but the one who had mended them was now in need of care and protection. The descent would be its own challenge, a journey where the guardians and the apprentice would have to work together to safeguard the very symbol of their newfound peace. As the group gathered around Lyra, a palpable wave of calm spread out from the Sunspire, touching every corner of the land with a sense of deep renewal. Lyra managed a weak but genuine smile. The fractured dawn of her visions was gone, replaced by a lasting, gentle light. She had seen the truth, and she had fulfilled it. The descent from the sum, it was a quiet journey of shared purpose. Alara wove threads of solidified moonlight into a gentle, sloping path, where before there had been only a sheer cliff, while Kalin supported Lyra, his arm a steady presence as she navigated a world that now felt muted and distant. Without her magic, the very air seemed thinner, the colors less vibrant. She felt a profound absence, as if a vital sense had been stripped away. To fill the silence, they spoke of the future. Kalin described his village, already feeling the gentle, steady light from the mended gates, the hope for renewed harvests and thriving waters. Alara, her voice softened with a new respect, shared the Veil Weaver's original purpose, not to hoard power, but to protect the world from forces it was not ready to wield. She pledged that her order would now become the guardians of the mended gates, ensuring their light remained stable and secure for all. This new alliance, born from conflict, felt like a stronger foundation than any single group could ever build alone. Yet for Lyra, the internal conflict remained. The applause of the world felt like it was for a person who no longer existed, the hero who had magic, not the young woman who had given it all away. She felt incomplete, a shell of her former self. This personal transition was a deep and meaningful challenge, but then they reached the mountain base. A crowd had gathered, not a roaring mob, but a quiet, reverent assembly. People from nearby villages and far-off towns stood with faces upturned, bathed in the gentle, perpetual dawn that now emanated from the peak. An elder from Kalin community stepped forward, tears tracing the lines on his face as he took Lyra's hand. He did not thank her for power or for glory, but for the simple, profound gift of a future. In that moment, the emptiness inside her did not vanish, but it was filled with a new and different meaning. Her choice had not created a void, but a space for something else to grow. Her decision crystallized then. She would not retreat from the world she had helped to save. She would embrace a new path. She still possessed the most valuable thing of all, knowledge. She knew the histories, the rituals, the delicate balance of power and purpose. She would become a teacher and a historian, a guide for the next generation of mages, ensuring that such a crisis would never happen again. As the celebrations began around her, with music starting and shared food being passed among the crowd, Lyra's gaze drifted. She noticed a young child watching her, their eyes wide with wonder. And in the depths of those eyes, she saw it, a faint, familiar spark, the nascent glow of a magical gift just awakening. A soft smile touched her lips. The world had its light back, and now it had a new beginning too. The school rose from the soil like a promise, its walls built from the very stone of the Sunspire, and its windows designed to catch the perpetual, gentle light of the mended gates. Lyra, Kalin, and Alara called it the Athenium of balanced light, a sanctuary for mages who wished to learn that true power lay not in dominance, but in harmony. Lyra, though she could no longer cast a single spell, became its first headmistress. Her authority came from a place no spellbook could teach, from the profound understanding of what magic costs and what it truly means to give it away. Students arrived from every corner of the land, drawn by the legend of the Mended Dawn and the new philosophy of unity it represented. They learned not only complex incantations, but also the ethics of power, the history of the Veil Weaver's guardianship, and the delicate art of listening to the world's own magical currents. The school itself became a living symbol, a beacon of hope that proved different traditions could not only coexist but strengthen one another. For Lyra, the days were full of purpose, yet there were quiet moments when a profound absence would wash over her. She would watch a student successfully conjure their first orb of light, and a ghost of a feeling would stir within her, a memory of that specific warmth flowing through her own fingers. It was a quiet echo, a reminder of a part of herself that was now woven into the sky. Instead of letting the feeling linger, she would channel that energy into her teaching, her guidance becoming all the more insightful for the understanding that informed it. She found a deep, resonant fulfillment in watching others grasp concepts she could no longer practice, their growth becoming her own form of magic. Kalin, his homeland now flourishing under the steady dawn, chose to remain by her side. His practical nature and deep empathy made him the perfect administrator for the school's daily life, and his bond with Lyra deepened from a shared quest into a steadfast partnership, built on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. Their collective work stood as a powerful testament that cooperation was the strongest defense against chaos. They remained vigilant, knowing the balance of magic was a living thing, always susceptible to new strains or old ambitions. Yet their foundation was strong, a network of mages united by a common purpose, rather than divided by old fears. Years flowed like a gentle river, and one cool dawn, Lyra walked alone through the school's tranquil gardens. The first rays of sun filtered through the gates, painted the dew on the petals with a familiar golden light. As she reached out to touch a blooming flower, a sensation, faint but unmistakable, bloomed in her chest. It was a fleeting warmth, not the roaring fire of her former power, but a quiet, gentle ember she had thought gone forever. She paused, her hand hovering in the soft light, a quiet wonder stirring in her heart at the impossible, hopeful thought. The warmth in her chest was no longer a fleeting ghost. During the school's dawn ceremony, as Lyra sat in quiet meditation before the mended gates, she felt it again, a soft trickle of energy flowing into her. It was not the roaring river of her former power, but something entirely different, a deep and soothing connection to the world's own living pulse. She could feel the patient strength of the mountain beneath her, the quiet joy of the morning breeze, and the steady rhythm of the light emanating from the stone archways. This new magic did not command, it listened. It allowed her to understand the subtle language of natural forces and, to her surprise, to bring a sense of calm to troubled minds. A student grappling with frustration would find peace after a brief, wordless conversation with her, their inner turmoil gently soothed by her mere presence. This ability became a quiet wonder within the school's walls, a new form of healing no one had anticipated. Yet, Lyra felt a thread of worry. After striving so hard to establish a perfect balance, was she introducing a new variable that could tip the scales? The thought that her unique connection might be seen as a disruption, or even a new form of imbalance, troubled her deeply. She sought guidance from Kalin and Alara, sharing her concerns openly. Kalin, ever practical, saw it not as a disruption, but as a natural evolution, a gift returned to her in a form befitting the world they had mended. Alara, with the deep perspective of the Veil Weavers, agreed. She explained that true balance is not a rigid state, but a dynamic harmony that welcomes new notes into its song. This new magic was not a force to be controlled, but a relationship to be nurtured, and it belonged in their teachings. Reassured, Lyra made a choice. She would not hide this gentle power. She began to explore it openly, using it to heal emotional wounds and to teach her students how to listen to the world around them, not just command it. She integrated these practices into the school's curriculum, establishing a new branch of study focused on empathic connection and harmonious existence. Her discoveries began to attract attention from distant lands. Travelers and scholars arrived at the Athenium, drawn by tales of the mage who had given her power to the world and received a different kind of magic in return. They came as new allies, eager to learn, though among them were occasional seekers who viewed her ability as a secret to be mastered rather than a wisdom to be shared. One afternoon, as Lyra demonstrated how to feel the latent energy in a simple river stone, a young student raised their hand. They asked not about the stone, but about the story. How did you first mend the gates? What was it really like to climb the Sunspire? Lyra paused, her fingers resting on the cool, smooth surface of the stone, and she looked out at the faces of her students, each one a testament to the world they had saved. The book's pages felt heavy with memory. Lyra spent years chronicling the full story of the shattered gates, not as a simple victory, but as a complex tapestry of fear, courage, and, ultimately, cooperation. She wrote of Kalin's village and the slow fading of the light. She detailed the Veil Weaver's solemn duty and their legitimate concerns. Most importantly, she wrote with honesty, about the profound personal commitment required to mend the world, ensuring that no future student would ever see such a choice as a simple bargain. This volume, titled The Mending of the Dawn, became the foundational text of the Athenium, read by every new student who walked through its doors. It taught them that true strength was found not in the might of a spell, but in the wisdom to know when and why to cast it. A quiet resistance emerged from some traditional mages in distant towers. They wrote long, critical letters arguing that the school's focus on soothing magic and emotional balance was a distraction from the pursuit of pure, potent arcane power. They saw compassion as a weakness. Lyra did not respond with anger or dismissal. Instead, she invited the most vocal critics to visit the school, to walk its halls and speak with its students. She listened patiently to their concerns, acknowledging their perspective before calmly explaining how a mage who understood the cost of power was ultimately a more stable and reliable guardian of it. Her calm diplomacy, backed by the undeniable success of the mended gates, won over many skeptics, transforming potential rivals into thoughtful collaborators. By including the Veil Weaver's perspective as a central chapter in her history, Lyra honored their centuries of guardianship and validated their initial opposition. This act of intellectual generosity did more than any treaty could to foster a lasting peace. The shared narrative, one that acknowledged multiple truths, became a powerful tool for unity. Alliances between the various magical communities grew stronger, creating a network of mutual understanding that significantly reduced the risk of any single group ever seeking to control the gates for themselves. One afternoon, during a quiet book signing in the school's sunlit library, a young mage with wide, earnest eyes approached Lyra's table. The student clutched a well-worn copy of the history, its margins filled with notes and questions. She asked not about the mechanics of the ritual, but about the feeling of the climb, the sound of the wind on the summit, and the moment the light first touched the crystal. In her passionate curiosity and her boundless dreams of the age of magic, Lyra saw a clear reflection of her own younger self, full of the same fire and the same need to understand how one small life could touch the vast expanse of the world. Lyra saw the familiar fire in the young mage's eyes. Alara, named for the very Veil Weaver who had once stood against Lyra on the mountain, now stood before her, speaking of a new dream. She described visions of scattered artifacts, ancient tools of harmony lost to time, and a deep conviction that finding them could weave a stronger, more resilient peace across the world. It was a quest born not of desperation, but of hope, and Lyra recognized the echo of her own younger self in every passionate word. She agreed to mentor Alara, seeing in her not a repetition of the past, but its peaceful evolution. Yet that very passion soon revealed its sharp edges. Alara's enthusiasm was a rushing river, powerful but prone to flooding its banks. In her eagerness to locate a rumored artifact, she once attempted a complex location spell without the proper grounding rituals, causing a localized tremor that unsettled the entire school's avian population for a full day. Lyra had to gently, but firmly, pull her back. True power, she explained, is not about the speed of the result, but the stability of the foundation. Every action sends ripples through the world's delicate magical currents, and a guardian must learn to read those ripples before making a wave. To impart this lesson beyond mere words, Lyra made a deeply personal decision. She brought Alara into her private study and shared her own journals, the unpolished records of her journey. Here were her own moments of fear on the Sunspire, her doubts in the face of the Veil Weavers, and the raw, aching feeling after the ritual. She showed Alara that wisdom is often carved from the grain of our own missteps. News of Alara's quest spread quickly through the magical networks. Messages of support arrived from Kalin's revitalized village and from allied scholars, but so did letters of cautious concern from more traditional enclaves. They worried that stirring ancient artifacts, even for a noble cause, could awaken dormant energies best left resting. Lyra felt the weight of this attention settle on her shoulders. She was not just a teacher anymore. She was a shield for her protege, responsible for guiding this new flame so it would illuminate rather than burn. As they pored over maps in the quiet library, tracing potential routes for Alara's first journey, a profound feeling washed over Lyra. It was a surge of quiet pride, a warmth that had little to do with magic and everything to do with legacy. The light she had given to the world was now being carried forward in a new form, by a new generation, and the path ahead, though uncertain, was brighter for it. The Whispering Valley was a realm of deep green light and profound quiet. Ancient beings of wind and leaf watched their every move from the shadows of the gnarled trees. Lyra did not raise a shield or a weapon. Instead, she extended her hands, palms open, and let her new soothing magic flow outward like a gentle mist. It was a conversation, not a confrontation, a quiet offering of peace that calmed the restless energy of the forest. The spirits, disarmed by this unfamiliar approach, slowly receded, their watchful presence becoming a passive curiosity. The path to the Harmony Stone, nestled in the mossy roots of a great elder tree, was now clear. As Lyra's fingers closed around the warm, smooth crystal, its energy surged through her, a resonant chord that vibrated in her very soul. This was not a power to be wielded, but a connection to be deepened. The amplification was immediate and profound. She could now hear the slow, patient thoughts of the ancient trees, their memories etched in rings of time, holding lore about the world's earliest days that had been lost to mages for centuries. Alara, however, fidgeted with restless energy. The success felt like a starting pistol, and she was eager to race toward the next goal, her mind already leaping to maps and possibilities. She saw the retrieved stone as a trophy, a key to be used, not a teacher to be heard. Lyra gently placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her to sit beside the elder tree. The quest is not a race to a finish line, she explained softly. It is a conversation with the past. Each artifact has a story, and if we do not learn it, we risk repeating the very mistakes we seek to mend. True strength lies in the patience to listen, feeling the weight of Lyra's gaze and the profound stillness of the forest. Alara reluctantly stilled her thoughts. She spent the next full day in quiet meditation with the Harmony Stone, not trying to command it, but allowing its gentle pulse to speak to her. She felt the echoes of the hands that had last held it, the intention of unity with which it was created, and the quiet sorrow of its long isolation. This intimate understanding transformed her view completely. The stone was no longer a mere tool. It was a partner, and its history was a lesson she now carried within her. Word of their peaceful retrieval traveled faster than any messenger bird. Messages of support and offers of aid began to arrive from allied mages and sympathetic communities, their hope a tangible force. But other, more guarded communications also found their way to the Athenium, carrying veiled warnings. Not all who sought these artifacts were motivated by harmony. Some saw them as sources of pure, untapped power, objects to be collected and controlled, and the news of their awakening had drawn keen attention from distant, ambitious rivals. With the Harmony Stone radiating a soft, steady light from within their travel pack, Lyra and Alara prepared for the next leg of their journey. They did not need to consult a map. The wind itself, now a friendly voice to Lyra's attuned senses, carried a new melody, a faint, rhythmic hum that spoke of a distant canyon where the very waterfalls were said to sing an ancient, unbreaking song. The song of the canyon waterfalls was a physical presence in the air, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in their bones. Before them lay a hidden lake, its surface not still but alive with intricate, swirling patterns that pulsed in time with the melody. This was no ordinary water. As they approached the shore, the serene music twisted into a dissonant roar. The lake churned, and from its depths rose a being of liquid force, its form sculpted from crashing waves and its eyes like whirlpools. The water elemental had been stirred, and its tempestuous mood now threatened to flood the entire canyon. Lyra stepped forward, her hands extended. She did not try to shout over the noise or fight the rising waves. Instead, she poured her soothing magic into the chaotic frequencies, not to silence the elemental song, but to harmonize with it. It was like finding the right note in a storm of discord, a delicate act of listening and empathy. Alara, watching the patterns of the water, saw a different opportunity. She focused her own will, not on the elemental itself, but on the lake's magical currents, weaving a stabilizing rhythm that supported Lyra's calming influence. Their magics intertwined, one offering peace and the other providing structure. The elemental's fury slowly subsided, its form settling from a raging torrent into a calm, luminous figure that regarded them with newfound curiosity. From its translucent hand, it offered a single, perfect vial of water that held a tiny, swirling galaxy of light within, the essence of ever calm. In her excitement, Alara moved forward to accept the gift. Her haste was her undoing. Her foot slipped on the wet stone, and the precious vial flew from her grasp, arcing toward the rocky shore. A cry caught in her throat, but Lyra was already moving. With a surge of that deep, listening magic, she did not catch the vial with her hands. She asked the air around it to slow, to cradle it, and the very wind obeyed, gently lowering the artifact into her waiting palm. The near accident hung in the air between them, a silent lesson, more powerful than any lecture. Alara's face, flushed with a mixture of regret and relief. "I am so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I let my eagerness override my judgment. I vow to be more mindful. We consult each other before any risk, from now on." Lyra simply nodded, her expression one of quiet understanding rather than frustration. They had both learned the cost of a single unthinking moment. The power they now carried in the vial was profound. A single drop could pacify turbulent emotions, potentially preventing conflicts before they even began. It was a tool for peace, which made it a treasure that others would covet. As the elemental bowed its head in a final blessing, the waters of the lake parted, revealing a solid path of stone leading toward the canyon's far end. But as they turned to leave, both Lyra and Alara felt a distinct, prickling sensation on the back of their necks. They were not alone. Unseen observers were tracking their progress, their presence a silent warning that the final leg of their journey would be the most perilous yet. The grove was a place of liquid shadow and shifting whispers. Trees bent at impossible angles, and the very ground seemed to breathe, distorting their sense of direction and time. Illusions tugged at the edges of Lyra's mind, replaying the moment on the Sunspire when her own magic had flowed out of her, a phantom ache of profound absence that threatened to overwhelm her. Beside her, Alara's voice was a steady anchor in the chaos. "Remember the stone," she urged, her own focus unwavering. Together they acted. Lyra channeled the soothing essence of the singing waters, a gentle wave that calmed the grove's deceptive magic, while Alara held the harmony stone aloft. Its resonant pulse cut through the illusions, revealing a single, clear path forward. At the path's end, resting on a pedestal of woven roots, was the luminal seed. It was no larger than a pebble, but it glowed with the concentrated light of a captured dawn. As Lyra's fingers closed around it, a wave of pure, warm energy flowed out from the seed, washing over the grove. The twisted shadows dissolved, and the lingering emotional weight of ancient magical struggles, a deep feeling held in the soil for generations, finally lifted, replaced by a profound and lasting peace. In that moment of clarity, Lyra knew exactly what to do with this final artifact. She would not lock it away. She would plant it at the heart of their school, a living symbol of the growth and renewal they championed, ensuring its power nurtured the entire community. Returning to the Athenium, they went directly to the central courtyard. As Lyra placed the luminal seed into the rich earth, it did not simply sprout. It erupted, a radiant tree of pure, silver bark and leaves of shimmering light surged upward, its branches spreading like a benevolent canopy. A gentle luminescence pulsed from its core, a beacon of hope visible for miles across the land. The immediate effect was a wave of renewed vitality that swept through the school, mending small troubles and brightening weary spirits. Yet such a powerful symbol could not go unnoticed. Alongside the messages of wonder and support from their allies, cautious queries began to arrive. Some voices, from isolated magical enclaves, expressed a deep-seated concern. They saw not a tree of life, but an instrument of overwhelming influence, a concentration of power that challenged the old, guarded ways of doing things. As the tree's gentle light filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground, Lyra and Alara felt a quiet but monumental satisfaction. Their quest was complete. Now the true work began, the delicate and vital task of weaving these three powerful artifacts into the daily life of their community, ensuring their gifts were understood, respected, and protected for all time. The day of the integration ceremony dawned with a palpable sense of anticipation. Mages from every tradition, from fire-wielding elementalists to star-reading astrologers, gathered in the courtyard beneath the shimmering canopy of the luminal tree. Lyra and Alara stood at the center, the harmony stone pulsing softly on a pedestal, and the vial of singing waters glowing beside it. Their goal was not a display of power, but a demonstration of unity. As they began the ritual, the three artifacts awoke in concert. A resonant hum from the stone merged with the melodic essence of the waters, and the tree's light wove them together into a visible field of gentle, golden energy that expanded to envelop the entire school grounds. The immediate effect was a profound and collective sigh of relief. Long-standing tensions between rival apprentices simply dissolved into respectful curiosity. A complex illusion that had been troubling a senior mage for weeks stabilized and clarified without effort. The aura did not command peace. It simply made it the easiest and most natural state of being, significantly reducing the chance of magical mishaps born of haste or misunderstanding. Not every heart was swayed so easily. A small group of mages from a northern enclave watched with stern faces, their leader, a stern geomancer named Boren, stepping forward to voice his dissent. "You speak of unity, but this feels like conformity," he declared, his voice cutting through the harmonious atmosphere. "You are smoothing away the rough edges that give our traditions their unique strength." He raised a hand, not to attack, but to test, channeling a spike of disruptive earth energy into the golden field. The reaction was not a violent rebuke. The field simply absorbed the disruptive intent, transmuting it into a wave of deep, empathetic understanding that washed over Boren himself. He did not feel defeated, but heard. He suddenly perceived the deep, genuine worry for his people's cultural identity that fueled his own resistance. Lyra seized this moment of clarity. She did not chastise or dismiss him. Instead, she walked to the edge of the field and extended a hand. "Your caution is a gift, Boren," she said, her voice calm and inclusive. "Your people have safeguarded the deep magics of the earth for generations. We need that perspective. Help us monitor these artifacts. Be the guardians who ensure this harmony does not become a dulling blanket. Join our council and protect the very diversity you fear losing." The offer, made in front of all the assembled traditions, transformed the conflict. Boren, disarmed by respect rather than force, slowly lowered his hand and gave a single, solemn nod. His agreement, earned through understanding, was a more powerful endorsement than any victory in a magical contest. The ceremony's overwhelming success cemented the Athenium's role as the new heart of magical cooperation. But with that prominence came a greater responsibility. Maintaining this delicate, active balance would require constant vigilance and open communication across a vast and varied magical landscape. As the visitors began to depart, carrying the renewed spirit of the ceremony back to their homes, Alara found Lyra watching the luminal trees light dance on the faces of the crowd. "The success here is just the beginning," Alara said, her voice brimming with a new kind of resolve. "But what of the communities who could not come? The isolated mages who still view this school with suspicion? Their unease will only grow in isolation. We should not wait for them to find us. We need a traveling council, a group that can carry the proof of this harmony directly to them." The traveling council moved like a quiet river of light across the landscape. Lyra and Alara were joined by Boren, representing the earth mages, and a serene wind caller named Anya, who spoke for the air traditions. Their first true test came in a highland village split by a generations-old feud. The earth mages cultivated the terrace fields, while the air mages guided the rains, yet they had not spoken in years, each blaming the other for poor harvests and harsh storms. Lyra did not ask them to set aside their grievances. Instead, she invited them to a barren field at the village edge. Boren and Anya stepped forward. As Boren channeled his magic, The hard soil softened, and nutrients rose to the surface. Then Anya called a gentle, misting rain to water the freshly turned earth. Together, they guided a seedling to sprout, grow, and bear fruit in the span of a single, breathtaking hour. The demonstration was a silent, powerful lesson in how their opposed forces were, in truth, essential partners. The old conflict did not end in a day, but the first, fragile bridge of understanding was finally built. Not every community welcomed their help. In a secluded valley, they found a village protected by a powerful, shimmering barrier, its inhabitants viewing the outside world with deep distrust. The council's offers of aid were met with silent, stony faces. Lyra knew that logic and displays of power would only reinforce their isolation. So, as the sun set, she sat alone outside their barrier and began to speak, not as a legendary figure, but as herself. She told them of the emptiness she had felt after the ritual, the profound silence where her magic had once lived. She spoke of the long journey to find a new purpose, and how that very transition had taught her to hear the world in a different, deeper way. She shared her fear that in mending one great fracture, she had failed to see the countless smaller ones. Her vulnerability, shared under the emerging stars, was a key. The next morning, the village elder emerged, her own eyes holding a similar weight of quiet reflection. "You speak of a change we understand," she said. "Come inside." With each village they visited, the network of allied communities grew stronger, a web of shared knowledge and mutual support. Yet their successes also cast a longer shadow. In an ancient forest, while using the Harmony Stone to calm a corrupted spring, they uncovered something unsettling. The magical decay there bore a distinct, chilling signature, an echo of an old, deliberately destructive force that sought not balance, but absolute control. It was a dark magic most thought had faded from the world, and its traces were a sobering reminder that their work of unification was also making them a clear target for any who opposed their vision. As the council packed their belongings for the return journey to the Athenium, a message found them, carried by a frantic wind sprite. It was from the guardians at the Sunspire. Unusual magical disturbances were being reported near the base of the mended gates of dawn, strange fluctuations that defied all known patterns. The message was urgent, its tone laced with a concern they had not heard in years. The very symbol of their hard-won peace was showing signs of strain, and their unfinished business was calling them back. The Sunspire's peak was unchanged, yet the air around the mended gates of dawn now thrummed with a new, unsettling sound. It was a soft echo, a whispered vibration that resonated not in their ears, but in their very souls. As Lyra and the council approached, the echo wove itself into visions, showing them the truth of the original shattering. It was not an act of malice, but one of profound fear. A lone mage, terrified by the sheer, untamable power of the gates, had broken them to prevent a potential catastrophe, choosing a fractured world over one he believed risked total ruin. The weight of that ancient, desperate choice settled heavily upon them all. Boren's voice was firm with practicality. "This echo is a weakness, a flaw in the mending," he argued. "We must contain it, seal it away before its instability spreads." But Lyra, feeling the echo's sorrowful pulse, understood a deeper truth. To suppress this memory was to repeat the very act that caused the initial break. True healing could not be built on a foundation of ignored pain. Full stability required something far more difficult than power, It required forgiveness. She turned to the assembled council, her gaze sweeping over their concerned faces. "We have spent so long mending stone and light," she said, her voice calm but resonant. "But we have not yet mended the intention behind the break. This echo is a plea for understanding, not a threat to be silenced. If we acknowledge this fear and release the grievance against it, we complete the cycle. We make the gates truly whole." Overriding the doubts of some, she led them in a quiet meditation at the very foot of the glowing archways. She asked them to call upon the harmony stone, the singing waters, and the luminal tree, not as tools of control, but as instruments of profound empathy. Channeling their combined energy, she guided everyone present to look inward, to find their own held resentments and quietly let them go, offering that same release to the ancient, fearful spirit whose choice had haunted the world for generations. As the meditation deepened, a wave of collective understanding washed outward from the peak. The plaintive echo did not vanish in a burst of light, but gently dissolved, its energy transmuted into a deep and lasting peace that settled over the mountain. The gates themselves seemed to sigh, their light softening into an even more steady and gentle radiance that flowed seamlessly into the world's magical currents. In that moment, Lyra felt a final, quiet release within her own spirit. The ghost of her sacrifice, the phantom ache of her lost magic, finally loosened its hold. She was not the girl who had climbed the mountain, nor the broken hero who had descended it. She was simply herself, whole in a new way, her purpose clear, and her path stretching forward into a future of endless teaching and discovery. The luminal tree's light now reached across continents, not through its branches, but through the network of new schools it had inspired. Lyra watched as architectural plans for a branch in a desert region were unrolled, its design incorporating sandstone towers that channel the sun's heat into creative energy, a stark contrast to the mountain stronghold of the wind callers or the floating libraries of the coastal mages. Each branch was a reflection of its home, tailored to the unique magical traditions and environmental needs of its people. They became vibrant hubs of learning and cultural exchange, where a student from the icy northern wastes could learn the delicate water-weaving songs of the southern deltas, and vice versa. This deliberate decentralization broke down centuries of magical isolation, weaving a global tapestry of shared knowledge that made the entire community far more resilient. Yet managing this growing network was a constant, delicate dance. Lyra found herself mediating between strong-willed branch leaders, each rightfully proud of their local methods. A debate over the standardization of foundational meditation techniques could stretch for days, with some leaders arguing for strict uniformity and others championing regional variation. The core challenge was balancing the need for a consistent ethical framework with the freedom for each branch to innovate and honor its own heritage. It was a test of her leadership, one that required patience and a deep trust in her colleagues. This trust led to her most significant decision yet. She formally delegated the day-to-day leadership of the original Athenium to Kalin, whose steady hand was perfect for administration, and appointed Alara as the chief emissary, traveling between branches to foster connections and help resolve disagreements. This freed Lyra to focus on her true calling, mentoring the next generation of headmasters and weaving the philosophical threads that held the entire network together. The wisdom of this decentralized structure was proven not in a council chamber, but during a sudden, natural surge in the world's magical currents. It was a phenomenon that, in a previous age, would have required a highly coordinated, centralized response. This time, the branches acted in concert without a single command. The earth mages grounded the erratic energies, the wind callers dispersed the buildup, and the water weavers channeled the excess into nourishing rains for drought-stricken lands. They stabilized the surge as a unified global community, preventing a crisis through pre-established trust and cooperation. During the next global meeting of branch leaders, held via shimmering communication pools, a profound sense of accomplishment filled the air. Looking at the determined, hopeful faces from every corner of the world, Lyra made a proposal. "Let us hold a Grand Convocation," she suggested, "a gathering of every tradition, not just to manage problems, but to celebrate how far we have come and to dream together of the world we wish to build for the next 1,000 years." The Grand Convocation transformed the school into a vibrant crossroads of the world. For an entire week, the air hummed with a dozen languages and glittered with displays of magic, both practical and beautiful. Water mages from the coast wove intricate fountains that danced to wind callers' melodies, while earth mages demonstrated how to coax barren soil into sudden, breathtaking bloom. The most profound developments, however, emerged from quiet collaboration. Healers from different traditions combined their knowledge to create new spells for mending emotional distress, and communication specialists devised a method for sending complex thoughts across vast distances, a breakthrough that promised to connect even the most isolated communities. Each shared success wove another strong thread into the fabric of their global alliance, proving that their collective wisdom was far greater than the sum of its parts. Yet a fundamental question soon surfaced, challenging the very scope of their unity. During a council of headmasters, a visionary star mage proposed a bold new direction. "Why limit ourselves to one world?" she argued, "when the stars themselves might hold untapped wells of magical energy." The potential for limitless power and knowledge ignited the imaginations of many, especially the younger mages who saw an infinite frontier. Lyra listened intently, her own mind turning to the lessons of the past. She rose and spoke not in opposition, but with deep caution. "Our own world still holds mysteries we have not fully understood," she reminded them. "We spent generations learning to live in harmony with the magic we have, to reach for the stars before we truly comprehend the balance of our own home risks, repeating the old cycles of ambition and instability. We must walk the path before us with sure footing before we attempt to fly." The debate that followed was passionate but respectful, a testament to how far they had come. Lyra did not seek to shut down the idea, but to ground it in their hard-won wisdom. She proposed a compromise, the formation of an exploratory council. This dedicated group would not launch into the void, but would first study the theoretical implications and potential consequences of such a venture. Their mandate would be to proceed with patience, ensuring that any future exploration would be guided by the same principles of unity and responsibility that had mended their own world. This thoughtful approach ultimately won the day, satisfying both the dreamers and the pragmatists by honoring the vision while safeguarding their peace. As the convocation drew to a close, the assembled leaders formalized their new community with a solemn pact. They vowed to meet in this way every 3 years, creating a lasting structure to navigate the future together. This was no fleeting celebration, but the birth of a permanent forum for peace and collective progress in the Age of Magic. Later, as the sun set on the final day, Lyra walked alone through the school's gardens. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, as students from every corner of the world, young and old, practiced new spells together under the gentle light of the Luminal tree. Watching them, she felt the weight of her long journey, not as a burden, but as a foundation. The fractured dawn was a memory, and in its place was this living, learning, ever-growing light. The final decades of Lyra's life settled into a gentle rhythm, a quiet counterpoint to the grand adventures of her youth. She chose a small, sunlit cottage nestled in the school's gardens. Its simplicity, a deliberate choice that allowed the new generation of leaders, like Kalin and Alara, to fully flourish without her shadow. Her days were spent in thoughtful pursuits, writing the philosophical texts that would become cherished classics, their pages filled not with complex spells, but with the profound wisdom of a life lived in balance. She still made time for promising students, her personal guidance, a quiet force that helped shape a generation of mages who valued empathy as much as elemental power. Each morning, without fail, she would walk to the mended gates of dawn, not to command their light, but to simply sit in meditation, feeling their steady, gentle hum as a reminder of the peace she had helped build. There were moments, watching a student embark on their first research journey, or hearing tales from distant branches, when a faint echo of the old thrill would stir within her. She occasionally missed the sharp clarity of a mountain climb, or the electric charge of a new discovery, yet that fleeting nostalgia was always replaced by a deeper, more resonant joy in witnessing the discoveries of others. She found immense satisfaction in seeing a young mage solve a problem in a way she had never considered, their fresh perspectives a testament to the dynamic, evolving world she had helped create. Her legacy was no longer a single act of dedication, but a living, breathing community of minds. Her presence remained a subtle, stabilizing force for the entire school. This was proven when a minor dispute over resource allocation between 2 departments began to threaten the campus unity. The debate grew heated, with old rivalries threatening to resurface. The current headmasters managed the situation well, but it was Lyra's quiet intervention that truly mended the rift. She did not call a formal meeting or issue a decree. Instead, she invited the 2 frustrated department leaders for tea in her garden. She spoke not of budgets or quotas, but of the school's earliest days, of the uncertainty and the hope that had once balanced on a delicate edge. Her calm perspective, rooted in that foundational memory, dissolved the tension instantly, reminding everyone of the greater purpose that bound them all together. The disagreement was settled by the next morning, a testament to the enduring power of her counsel. One tranquil evening, as she sat on her cottage porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of violet and gold, a familiar warmth bloomed softly in her chest. It was the same gentle, persistent ember she had felt years before, the quiet magic of connection that had returned to her. This time, however, the feeling did not surge or fade. It simply was a steady and comforting glow that felt as natural and eternal as the light from the gates themselves. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep into her bones, that her work was truly complete. The world did not need a legendary hero anymore. It needed the quiet, everyday work of its own people. A soft, contented smile touched her lips as the last light of day faded, not into darkness, but into the gentle, perpetual luminescence of the mended dawn. The day of the ceremony arrived under a sky of perfect, cloudless blue. In the courtyard, bathed in the luminal tree's gentle light, the entire school community stood in respectful silence. Lyra, her hands holding the familiar weight of the focus crystal, faced Alara. There were no grand speeches about destiny. Instead, Lyra spoke of trust, of a journey shared, and of a future now ready for new hands to guide it. She placed the crystal, cool and smooth, into Alara's waiting palms, a silent transfer of a legacy that was not about power, but about purpose. With it, she gifted her personal journals, the unvarnished record of her fears and triumphs, knowing that true leadership is built on shared vulnerability as much as on shared strength. Alara's voice was clear and steady as she made her pledge, not to lead with authority, but to serve with the same empathy and unwavering commitment to cooperation that had defined Lyra's life. A wave of heartfelt gratitude, warm and palpable, washed over Lyra from the crowd. She saw it in the faces of her oldest colleagues and the youngest students, a profound appreciation for the world she had helped them build. It was a moment of pure joy, yet beneath the surface, she felt the bittersweet pull of nostalgia. This chapter of her life, so long and so defining, was gently closing. She looked at Alara, standing confident and resolved, and any lingering worry vanished, replaced by absolute trust. The school's heart was safe. Later, as the celebrations continued with music and shared stories, Lyra found Kalin. She shared her decision to embark on a different kind of quest, a quiet journey to the serene, forgotten corners of the world she had only ever known through ancient texts. She asked if he would join her, not as a protector, but as a companion. His answer was a simple, warm smile, a testament to the steadfast friendship that had been their anchor through so much. This smooth, deliberate passing of the torch ensured the school's core values would endure, its future secured not by a single legend, but by a living institution. Lyra's departure was not an ending, but the beginning of a new story for everyone, as she and Kalin walked through the school's main gate with nothing but simple travel packs. A soft, knowing breeze stirred the leaves of the luminal tree. The sound was like a gentle, whispered farewell, a final confirmation that the world and the light were in the best of hands. Their journey began along a path of moss and memory, leading them first to the Whispering Falls. The water did not roar, but spoke in 1,000 soft voices, each droplet a syllable in a language only Lyra's attuned senses could fully comprehend. She would sit for hours on the damp, cool stone, her hands resting on the earth, not commanding but listening. With Kalin patiently transcribing the melodies, she translated the Waterfalls' ancient stories into a series of haunting, gentle songs, each one a record of a time when the mountains were young. This was more than simple travel. It was a pilgrimage of peace. Their quiet presence acted as a balm. In places where old, minor magical conflicts had left faint marks upon the land, thin traces of dissonance in the soil, Lyra's soothing connection gently persuaded the local spirits to emerge from their long watchfulness. She did not force a mending, but offered a space for understanding, and the land itself seemed to breathe more easily as the last echoes of forgotten struggles finally faded into harmony. Lyra's advanced years brought a different rhythm to their quest. There were days when a steep incline required a slower pace, or when a lingering chill in the air meant a longer rest beside their campfire. Yet these apparent delays were never wasted. A slow walk allowed Lyra to notice the subtle, glowing fungi that lit the forest floor at dusk, a detail they would have missed in a hurried march. A quiet afternoon, spent with a family of nomadic herders, became a chance to record their oral histories, songs about the constellations that guided their journeys. Lyra's wisdom transformed every pause into a deeper connection, proving that the true value of a journey lies not in the distance covered, but in the depth of the moments shared. It was in the starlit meadows, a vast plain where the night sky felt close enough to touch, that Lyra's purpose crystallized. She watched Kalin carefully sketching the unique, bioluminescent flowers that bloomed only under starlight, and she saw the profound value in what they were collecting. This was not just a personal farewell tour. It was a gathering of the world's quietest, most overlooked wonders. She decided then to compile all their findings into one final, great work. It would not be a history of conflicts or powerful rituals, but a gentle guide to the hidden songs, the forgotten stories, and the secret, peaceful places scattered across the land. This book would be her last gift, a map of wonder meant to inspire not just mages, but any soul with a curious heart to step off the beaten path and listen. Their travels became a living thread, reinforcing the global network of harmony Lyra had helped to build. Word of their pilgrimage flowed ahead of them through the magical currents, and in every village and enclave, they were welcomed not as distant legends, but as honored elders and friends. Communities shared their own local lore with them, adding new chapters to the growing guide and strengthening the bonds between all the allied traditions. One evening, as they rested in the starlit meadows, Lyra lay back on the soft, cool grass, looking up at a sky dusted with countless points of light. A profound and peaceful contentment settled over her, as deep and quiet as the universe above. She knew, with a certainty that felt as natural as the turning of the stars, that their work was complete. It was time to make the journey back to the school, to go home one last time. The path back to the Sunspire felt less like a climb and more like a homecoming. Lyra moved with a slow, deliberate grace, her hand resting on Kalin's arm, not for support, but for shared comfort. They reached the summit under a sky, just beginning to soften from deepest indigo to a gentle gray. The mended gates of dawn stood silent and serene, their ancient stone radiating the same steady, soothing light they had poured into the world for decades. Lyra settled herself at the very base of the central archway, her back against the warm stone, and closed her eyes. Kalin stood a respectful distance away, a silent witness to the quiet culmination of a long and purposeful life. As the first sliver of sun broke the horizon, a profound change began. Lyra's form started to glow with a soft, internal luminescence. It was not a sudden flash, but a gentle brightening, as if she were becoming transparent, filled with the same essential light as the gates themselves. She did not struggle or show any distress. Her breathing simply slowed and then stilled, as her physical form peacefully dissolved into countless motes of shimmering gold. These particles did not scatter on the wind, but flowed directly into the stone of the gates, sinking into the archways and strengthening their light until it pulsed with a renewed, vibrant warmth. A wave of deep, abiding calm washed out from the peak, touching the entire land with a sense of perfect peace. For Kalin, the sense of absence was a physical ache, a hollow space where his oldest friend had been. Tears traced quiet paths down his face, but they were not tears of despair. As he stood bathed in the gate's newly fortified glow, he felt a familiar presence in the gentle morning breeze that brushed his cheek and in the unwavering steadiness of the light. Lyra was gone, but she was also everywhere. His grief was tempered by an unshakable sense that her work was now complete in the most profound way possible. Later, with Alara and other members of the council gathered in the school's courtyard, Kalin carried out his final promise. He held a simple vessel containing the last physical trace of Lyra's journey. He did not speak of an ending as he gently spread its contents around the roots of the great luminal tree. He spoke of continuity, of ensuring her spirit would forever be a part of the living heart of the community she had built. As the fine dust settled into the soil, the tree's light seemed to pulse in acknowledgement, its leaves shimmering with a faint, melodic chime. The community's remembrance quickly transformed into a celebration of her life, a gathering filled with shared stories, heartfelt music, and a renewed commitment to the ideals she embodied. Her transition was not a tragedy, but a powerful reminder that a life dedicated to compassion and courage ripples outward forever. In the quiet days that followed, Alara often found herself drawn to the luminal tree at twilight. She would sit with her back against its silver bark, listening to the rustle of its luminous leaves. In those moments of quiet reflection, she did not feel alone. A deep, resonant certainty would settle in her heart, a feeling of guidance and affirmation that was as gentle as a whisper and as strong as stone. It was in one such moment, feeling that steadfast presence in every beam of light, that she fully accepted the weight and honor of her role, resolving to lead with the same grace and unwavering strength that had mended the world. Generations later, the story was told as a lullaby for the entire world. Parents would whisper it to their children, not as a frightening tale of ancient perils, but as a soothing promise of how darkness can be mended. The Age of Magic did not become an era of grand conquests or overwhelming displays of power. Instead, it matured into a time of quiet understanding, where the greatest spells were those that healed the land and united communities. The name Lyra was spoken with a gentle reverence, not for the immense power she once wielded, but for the profound lesson she embodied, that the most enduring magic is the kind we weave between each other. Her personal journey, from a fearful apprentice to the heart of a global harmony, became a foundational myth for a civilization that had learned to value cooperation above all else. The gates of dawn themselves needed no further mending, their light a constant and gentle presence, as reliable as the sunrise. They were no longer a secret kept by a few, but a symbol for all, a reminder that even the most profound fractures can be healed with compassion and courage. Pilgrims would journey to the Sunspire, not to ask for power, but to simply sit in the tranquil glow and reflect on their own capacity for renewal. The mountain peak became a place of quiet contemplation, where individuals from every walk of life could feel connected to the legacy of that single, selfless choice. In the schools and libraries that spanned the continents, Lyra's final book Her gentle guide to the world's hidden wonders became the most cherished text. Students learned that magic was not just a force to be commanded, but a relationship to be nurtured with the world around them. They were taught to listen to the songs of the rivers and to understand the slow, patient language of the stones. The curriculum focused on empathy and ethical responsibility, ensuring that every new mage understood the weight and the wonder of their gifts. The focus was always on how their abilities could serve the greater good, fostering communities where no one was left behind. This deep-seated cultural shift created a resilience that lasted for centuries. When challenges arose, as they inevitably do, the global network of mages did not fracture into competing factions. They would gather in their communication pools, drawing upon the shared wisdom of Lyra's teachings and the example of the First Council. Disagreements were navigated with patience, and solutions were found through a consensus that honored every voice. The world had learned that unity was not a weakness, but its greatest and most powerful defense against any form of chaos. And so, the light endured. It was present in the simple, everyday magic that helped crops grow, that purified water, and that brought comfort to those in need. It flowed through the hearts of healers, teachers, and builders, a quiet current of hope that connected every living thing. The legend of the Gates of Dawn became a timeless story, a soothing narrative passed from one generation to the next, assuring all who heard it that even in the face of great fear, a single act of courage, rooted in care for others, can truly mend the world.
you.